Your top stories this evening, sponsored by Courts Bringing Value Home. Youths must be afforded equitable opportunities. APNU youth activist. Dual citizens cannot be members of parliament. GECOM urges parties to conduct due diligence. APNU vows an international investigation into death of Adriana Young. Aubry Norton says people got to answer. And holistic approach needed before legalization of cannabis. Norton. HGP Nightly News begins now. Good evening to our viewers here in Guyana and online. I'm ALETHEA Grant with the Tuesday, 8th July 2025 edition of the HGP Nightly News. This is what you should know this evening. Every young person must be afforded equitable opportunities irrespective of race, religion, and creed, and not selectively. This call was renewed by youth activists in the A Partnership for National Unity. Antonio Day has more.
Steeped in corruption, where contracts go to friends and families, and the rest of us are left begging for a fair share.
That was Rivaldo Borbal, youth activist and a Partnership for National Unity member, addressing a gathering of party supporters over the weekend. Borbal asserted that youths deserve to exist on their society, free from victimization and nepotism. The young man posited that under the current regime, discrimination and exclusivity are common practices. He said there are instances where persons of East Indian heritage are sidelined or ostracized if they are not in favor of the government.
Where Indo-Guyanese like myself are told to shut up if we do not support the PPP.
In his message to predominantly young people, Borbal said Guyanese deserve better.
I see victimization, I see fear, I see division, and that is not the Guyana we deserve.
The young man made it clear that he's an unequivocal supporter of Mr. Aubry Norton. He elaborated that under the leadership of Mr. Norton, youths will have a seat at the table, where accountability, transparency, and inclusivity are the pillars of good governance.
This coalition represents all Guyanese, not just one group. This coalition stands for good governance, for accountability, for inclusion, and for a future where no Guyanese is judged by race, religion, or political affiliation.
Eden Kerben, Ronald Daniels, Dexter Todd, Saiku Andrews, Vanessa Thomas, and Onyx Duncan are among the young faces in the APNU camp. Kerben in his social media post addressed the hesitancy many young people feel about expressing their political beliefs. He said for too long, many young people, myself included, have stayed quiet about their political beliefs. End of quote. The attorney at law added, not because they don't care, but because they are afraid of backlash, of judgment, or being labeled or victimized just for supporting a party. But the future of Guyana is far too important for silence. End of quote. Antonio Day reporting for the HGP Nightly News.
Now, a very important reminder from the Guyana Elections Commission. Dual citizens cannot be members of parliament. The electoral body is also urging political parties to conduct their due diligence. Travis Chase reports.
Apparently relying on a January 2019 High Court ruling that parliamentarians with dual citizenship is unconstitutional, the Guyana Elections Commission has issued a reminder to all political stakeholders and aspiring candidates that individuals holding dual citizenship are not qualified to be elected as members of the National Assembly. In a press release, GECOM said that adherence to constitutional provisions governing eligibility for parliamentarians is important. The Commission stated that any list of candidates featuring a dual citizen would be considered defective. The advisory highlighted Article 1551A of the Constitution, which stipulates that, quote, no person shall be qualified for election as a member of the National Assembly who is, by virtue of his or her own act, under any acknowledgement of allegiance, obedience, or adherence to a foreign power or state, The electoral body continued that to be a member of the National Assembly of Guyana, a person must be Guyanese citizen, at least 18 years old, be registered as an elector, and able to speak and read English well enough to participate actively in parliamentary proceedings. In addition, according to GECOM, Article 1551D outlines further disqualifications for candidacy. Individuals holding or acting in certain public offices are not eligible, including judges of the Supreme Court of Judicature, members of the Public Service Appellate Tribunal, members of the Elections Commission, Judicial Service Commission, Public Service Commission, Teaching Service Commission, or Police Service Commission, the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Ombudsman, and the Auditor General. With nomination days set for July 14 and regional and general elections set for September 1, GECOM is urging all election contestants to exercise due diligence when preparing their lists of candidates to ensure full compliance with constitutional requirements and to avoid the rejection of any lists on technical grounds. Travis Chase, HGP Nightly News.
The Ministry of Education is still refusing to deduct union dues from teachers' salaries. It is possible, though, that the ministry could be taken back to court now that a new president of the Guyana Teachers Union takes office. Here again is Travis Chase.
The Ministry of Education seems to be deliberately disobeying a High Court's ruling that it was unconstitutional for the Ministry of Education to stop the automatic deduction of union dues for the Guyana Teachers Union. Newly elected president of the GTU, Coretta MacDonald, said the union is deeply concerned over such blatant refusal by the Education Ministry.
Because of the vindictiveness of this government, our teachers' dues are not being remitted to this union because they've stopped that in February of 2024. That was stopped.
High Court Judge Sandel Kisoon on April 17, 2024, ordered the state to continue deduction and remittance of the dues to the teachers' union. Automatic deductions had been halted as government retaliated against a prolonged strike that was called by the GTU to pressure the government to collectively bargain for increased salaries and other benefits. However, according to MacDonald, teachers are using innovative ways to pay their dues.
Our teachers are committed, and many of our teachers are out there, and they are using the pay over the counter, they're using the MMG option to pay their dues to the Guyana Teachers Union.
The government had moved to the Court of Appeal after Justice Kisoon's ruling. The appeal court then refused the government's request to stay the High Court order, ruling that the GTU would suffer undue prejudice if the stay was granted and that the balance of justice lies in favor of the union.
Together with the new team, we are going to work to ensure that our teachers are offered the best representation that they could ever ask for.
Nightly News understands that the government could soon be hauled before the courts for contempt on this issue. Travis Chase, HGP Nightly News.
Thanks, Travis. Join us after the break for more news. Welcome back. You're watching the HGP Nightly News. Antonio Day tells us that former Consular General of Guyana to Brazil, Shirley Melville, has assured indigenous peoples that under the leadership of Aubry Norton, their rights will be revered and protected.
In her appealing address to a diverse gathering of a Partnership for National Unity supporters over the weekend, Shirley Melville, member of the People's National Congress Reform, has encouraged citizens of indigenous descent to never lose hope, as their rights to free, prior and informed consent will be respected under the leadership of Aubry Norton. The former Consul General of Guyana said that the nation's first peoples have been disrespected and neglected under the ruling People's Progressive Party Civic.
Our citizens will not only sit and listen to the politicians and then not be allowed to ask questions as is done by the PPP government today.
The PNCR member flagged the dictatorship of the annual National Two-House Council Conference, which he said at times are facilitated to only accommodate the voices of government officials and not indigenous peoples. Melville made allusions to issues such as land titling demarcation, which to date has been unresolved in many indigenous communities. According to the passionate indigenous woman, it is clear the current government misrepresents the interests of the nation's First Peoples.
Presently, it is a great embarrassment to us. An up-to-led government would allow people to elect their leaders. The entire operation of the National Social Council will not be controlled by politics.
She noted that this can only come to an end unless the nation's First Peoples exercise their democratic will of voting the PPP out of office.
We are not a one Guyana. We are one people, one nation, one destiny. And come September the 1st, we go there and we mark our X, no other than the hand with the palm.
Vincent Henry, leader of the Ghana Action Party, has shared similar sentiments recently with Nightly News.
One here is really showing quite clearly has become a means by which the People's Progressive Party does its campaigning at all levels. This doesn't augur well for one people, one nation, one destiny. It augurs well for just one set of Guyanese, and that is the ruling elite.
One Tushaw who preferred his name not to be mentioned said to this newscast that several indigenous leaders are unhappy with the construct of the NTCC as the state continues to trample on their rights. Antonio Day reporting for the HGP Nightly News.
A Partnership for National Unity is promising an international investigation into the death of Adriana Young. Presidential candidate of a Partnership for National Unity says, quote, only a demon in the regime would seek to cover up a child's death, end of quote. Travis Chase is on that story.
Leader of the People's National Congress Reform and of the Partnership for National Unity, Aubry Norton, is staunch in his party's position that the circumstances surrounding the death of 11-year-old Adriana Young must be thoroughly and independently investigated. As such, the presidential candidate promised such an investigation should the APNU take office after the September 1 polls.
And once we vote them out, within 100 days, there will be a proper international investigation into the death of Adriana Young.
Norton was at the time addressing the thousands gathered at the Square of the Revolution to mark the launch of the APNU elections campaign. He said that if the APNU had its way, there would have already been answers following the death of the young child.
We owe it to young Adriana Young. We owe it to young Adriana Young to vote this government out.
Adriana Young's body was retrieved from the pool of the Doubleday Hotel at Tushin, East Bank, Essequibo on April 24, 2025. The Guyana Police Force continues to withhold a copy of the final autopsy report from the family of Adriana Young and has told their lawyer, Dr. Dexter Todd, that he must go to the court if he wants to document.
There is a word called justice. Under the People's Progressive Party, the word justice walked out of the country. We got to bed, and when we got up the next day, justice gone.
Norton suggested that from all indications, the circumstances surrounding the death of Adriana Young was swept under the carpet by the Irfan Ali-led regime.
It must be a demon in a regime that seeks to cover up the murder of an 11-year-old child.
Young was laid to rest on June 22, while her family remains clueless as to what really caused the demise of the young child. Travis Chase, HGP Nightly News.
Thanks, Travis. We have more news for you on the other side of the break. Welcome back. You with the HGP Nightly News. A group of Guyanese students from grades 4 to 11 will soon benefit from world-class training in robotics, coding, artificial intelligence AI, and drone technology. Camilles Academy is set to introduce an international certificate program for robotics, coding, and AI after signing a memorandum of understanding with RoboCamps India, a globally recognized training company that has been creating dynamic robotics and AI labs for schools across the world. The signing took place at Oxford University during the World School Summit held in the UK late last month, which was attended by Academic Director of Camilles Academy, Dr. Camille Duki Gora. The Academy was among 50 awardees from different continents that were acknowledged for their innovation in education. The director, while expressing excitement at the prospects of the new partnership, noted that the Academy remains committed to empowering the next generation of innovators and tech leaders. According to her, students will start reaping the benefits of the partnership as early as September, as several courses will be tested at the school's annual summer camp programs during the July-August period. Antonio Day will now tell us that several Caribbean territories have begun decriminalizing the use of marijuana. Leader of the opposition and presidential hopeful Aubry Norton says this is a decision that requires a full-pronged approach. Here is more.
Following the legalized cannabis party, drawing alliance with the Partnership for National Unity coalition, Rasli Ansal is a lobbyist for the legalization of marijuana. However, opposition leader Aubry Norton, during a recent press conference, when asked his position on this by Nightly News, gave this response. Countries such as Jamaica, Uruguay, Mexico, and Argentina have legalized the use of cannabis. Norton said that the current regime has shown interest in the industrialization of the hemp industry, and so far he's willing to support such venture.
With the government passing legislation to have a hemp industry, they have shown an interest in operating in the hemp industry, and we have no problem with that.
The APNU presidential hopeful did not rule out the viability of marijuana nor its legalization, but noted that a full-pronged approach is necessary.
In one of the discussions I have had with some of the persons, I said to them that this is not a straightforward issue. It will have to be something that is undertaken by the wider society.
The PNCR leader noted that given the perceptions by many members of society regarding the use of marijuana, the subject has to be examined comprehensively.
I also made the point that, as I understand it, there are two categories of marijuana, one that is addictive and one that is medicinal, and issues like that will have to be addressed.
Persons found with up to 30 grams of marijuana will no longer face jail time, but will be required to undergo counseling or engage in community service, as per the government's Narcotics, Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Amendment Bill that was passed in 2022. Instead of jail time, persons nabbed with 1 to 5 grams of marijuana will undergo mandatory counseling. Those nabbed with more than 15 grams of marijuana, but more than 30 grams of the drug, will be required to provide community service. I'm Antonio Day reporting for the HGP Nightly News.
Stay tuned for regional news.
Interested in honoring or paying tribute to a loved one, or just making a loved one feel special? HGP TV offers you all that and more. Air your birthday greetings, death announcements, and wedding anniversaries on HGP TV today. HGP TV offers affordable prices, convenience, and great services. Call us on 220-3660 or email us at sales@hgptv.com.
Good evening and welcome to Tuesday's edition of the Regional News. I'm Antonio Day. We begin with some disturbing news in Trinidad and Tobago. A mother of 3 was shot dead in Enterprise, Trogonis on Friday night in what her friends and family on Monday described as senseless killing. Feline Vanessa Campbell, 34 of Maracano Street, Tunapuna, was found lying face down in a concrete drain around 7:50 p.m. on Friday night, after shortly a report of gunshots was relayed to E999 Command Center. Officers from Trogonis CID found Campbell with a gunshot wound to the upper back. There has been 196 murders for the year so far in the Twin Island Republic. Turning attention to Jamaica. 15 years after joining the Caribbean Court of Justice as its youngest judge, Jamaica-born Justice Winston Anderson has reached a new milestone. Anderson was sworn in as the court's 4th president on the cusp of CARICOM's 49 regular heads of government meeting in Jamaica on Sunday. Delivering his inaugural address, Anderson issued a direct and passionate appeal for CARICOM states, particularly Jamaica, to fulfill their treaty obligations and to accede to the CCJ's appellate jurisdiction. He paid tribute to his predecessors, Presidents Michael de la Bastide, Sir Dennis Byron, and Adrian Saunders, crediting them with building the foundation of what he described as quote-unquote, an institution of excellence. Anderson's own journey began in rural St. Anne, Jamaica. Raised in modest circumstances, he credited his early community for instilling values of discipline, integrity, and perseverance. His legal career was shaped by regional institutions, first as a student at the University of the West Indies, then as a lecturer at Cave Hill, and later as general counsel to CARICOM. And we end with some international news. Powerhouse Asian economies Japan and South Korea said on Tuesday they would try to negotiate with the United States to soften the impact of sharply higher tariffs that President Donald Trump now plans to impose from the start of August. Trump ramped up his trade war again on Monday, telling 14 nations that they would face tariffs ranging from 25% for countries including Japan and South Korea to 40% for Laos and Myanmar. However, with the start date pushed back to August 1, those countries were focusing on the new 3-week window to press for an easier ride. Japan wants concessions for its large automobile industry. Top trade negotiator Ryosei Akazawa said on Tuesday. Thank you for watching. I'm Antonio Day. Goodbye for now.
Youths must be afforded equitable opportunities. APNU youth activist. Dual citizens cannot be members of parliament. GECOM urges parties to conduct due diligence. APNU vows an international investigation into the death of Adriana Young. Aubry Norton says people got to answer, and holistic approach needed before legalization of cannabis. Norton. Those are our major headlines. For these stories and more, please go to our website. It's www.hgptv.com. I'm ALETHEA Grant. Thanks for watching.